Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves, the part of the podcast where we sit with spirit, with our angels, our guides, our loved ones, and I give the messages for the collective. As always, with everything in the spiritual world, run it through the barometer of your own heart space. Take what resonates with you, leave the rest, because resonance is the true test of what really is meant for us right now. So, that being said, starting off with the angel messages, it's always really interesting to me when I record Sitting with Spirit. It's usually on off days because on my usual work days, I just have too much going on. And it's really interesting to me on the days that I do record Sitting with Spirit, how there are synchronicities with some of the messages in client sessions. And it just makes me feel so supported because I'm like, oh, thank you so much. It's like two birds with one stone type of situation. It feels like an energy saver. So, that being said, one of the first messages that came through was that the collective right now is in this moment of really intense crown chakra blocks. And I talk about this all the time because it's so common. It's the most common energetic block there is: overthinking, second guessing, living in fear. And when you're in a crown chakra block, it feels like everything is constricted and you can only focus on what isn't working, on what's disappointing, on what is missing, on what the problem is, on what all of the fear is saying. And that's a really big part of the message this week. And I'm going to go back into that in a bit. But in that vein, we're now in Pisces season. There's a lot of Piscean energy in the collective right now. And there's a lot of illusion in the collective right now as well, meaning like what's real, what's not. Am I living in a fantasy world? And when we're in a crown chakra block place, that fantasy world can be negative projections onto something neutral. For example, time or space that is open in your life, like projecting a fearful story about how nothing will ever fill it in the way that you want to. So there can just be a lot of sort of fearful stories swirling around, and they can feel very limiting and constricting. And the first message here is like, when that comes up, instead of trying to think your way through it, the way forward is feeling your way through it. So we have, as a collective, gotten really far with mental healing in terms of talk therapy, recognizing energetic patterns, rationally thinking our way through, and making new strategies from that logical mental perspective, whether that's mantra work, whether that's identifying shadows or insecurities and talking them out and thinking about them in a different way. We've also done a lot of soul work on the collective level with connecting to our own intuition, connecting to our angels and guides, connecting to deeper veins of spiritual healing and different modalities there. But where we as a collective haven't gone as deep is the body side of things. And it's such an important part of the puzzle. When we are in a moment where the crown chakra block is so strong and all we want is to think our way through and have a for sure plan and strategy that makes us feel in control, but that's not available to us in the moment. It is extra important to drop into the wisdom of our physical body. So, what does that look like? When you're in this moment where the scarcity is coming up, where the fear is coming up, where the unknown feels triggering, dropping into where does this live in my physical body, and just giving yourself time and space to feel, to ask your inner child what they want you to know about that, but to really just find time to sit in sacred space to feel, because our body remembers and our body holds and our body carries. And if we don't take conscious time to sink back into the wisdom of our body, especially in a time where survival feels so up and down and things feel very constricted energetically, it's going to be really hard for us to connect with our strength, with our power, and with the primal instincts that will guide us through this time period. So sit with your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly and just breathe. And you can start when uncomfortable emotions come up and then your mind wants to create a story. Observe the story, but don't forget to feel the actual feeling. That feels so important. So, another message coming through is to contribute to peace. To contribute to peace. And I feel like right now there's a lot of media strategies around constant bombardment of scary news and fear and threats. And I feel like those of us in the spiritual world, it's an unprecedented time as a spiritual content creator in terms of having a platform online, living through really scary times. And finding our voice in these times is what's actually helpful for the collective. And I think we always have to remember to shift from ego to service. And that's how we know we're truly in alignment with our angels, ancestors, and guides. It's not about, are my predictions going to be right? How many views am I getting, etc. It's really about, how can I help the world for the highest good, for them, not for me. And I think that this is part of the contribute to the peace message, is that in this moment where political strategies, news strategies want us so scared and inundated and threatened, I don't know if it's helpful for us to contribute to that energy, meaning creating videos based on scary predictions that your guides are saying are going to happen, or putting out content there that contributes to that collective chaos crown chakra block. I think that for us, where and I'm speaking for myself, we can be most of service when maybe we call out energetic trends that we see, but in a way that gives people tools, empowerment, and hope. Because I think that is really what is needed right now. And it's just a moment where we want to contribute to peace. So that's on the professional level if you're in the intuitive spaces, but also just everywhere in life. Where can you contribute to peace? That's a big question. If you've ever been to Cafe Gratitude in LA, that's like the Sitting with Spirit Cafe Gratitude question of the week. How can I contribute to peace? So, yeah, I think that it's also really necessary during this time of all of this Pisces energy to also say that the most spiritual choice is not to float away on a cloud. The most spiritual space is to stay spiritual, stay in your heart, stay in your power, stay in your service right here. And that's why all of the water signs, which water is known as the element in astrology that's connected to intuition and psychic stuff, their sister sign is an earth sign, because it's so important to be grounded in our current reality. And that's the true love, that's the true spirituality, is being grounded right here, right now, how we can be of service and be in our physical body and not get lost in a completely other reality that does not help anybody here on earth. And I think that it's very tempting to float away on a cloud. And I totally get that. But if our soul wanted that, it wouldn't have chosen to come into a body. The body is so important. And in that vein, that voice, that inner voice that is like, is this really real? Am I really speaking to angels? Do spirits really speak to us? Was that really a sign? That's actually such a good, healthy part of the spiritual experience. And it's a strong mental cord back to groundedness and embodiment. And that's that earth sign energy. If you have that voice that's like cynical and critical and a skeptic about spiritual work, that's actually a good thing as long as you don't over identify with it. I have that same voice, and it's the sign that you are grounded enough in physical reality to have the right mental conditions to go deeper into the spiritual world, because you're so tethered. So if that voice is coming up for you, know it's a good thing, but just not to over identify with it, but it serves a spiritual function. And so right now, with all of this Piscean energy, there is this feeling of what's real, what's not. Intuition is really heightened. Our dreams are really heightened. The way that our spirit guides are working with us on earth is really heightened. And it's unprecedented times for them in the spirit world too. They're helping us with new energetic strategies too. People are coming online to their intuition and trusting that more every day too. And so I think right now is really all about finding the balance between the groundedness, the embodiment, the skepticism, and the desire to stay here on earth, and tapping into the spiritual higher realms and getting the guidance from all of our team over there. It's a really interesting time energetically. And I also got this really sweet message that came through because I was in meditation the other day and I was like speaking to my angels. And I was like, angels, you guys are just so kind and gentle in the way that you give your messages. And they're very light. They're not about predicting the future, they're about giving us this light, beautiful guidance to help us create our highest possible timeline. That doesn't mean there won't be evidence. That doesn't mean there won't be things specific to you, but their style of guidance is light. And they were saying that basically there's such an old form of consciousness, and we are a newer, younger form of consciousness here in humanity, that it would be as if we were speaking to a child. So, how we speak to children and would give them advice is basically how angels feel speaking to us. Like the way that we kind of, I don't want to say sugarcoat things for kids, but the way we try to make it simple and make it positive and make it happy. It's like that's what they're trying to do for us. And I found that funny. It just made me laugh. So that message came through that we're a younger consciousness. And so that's the reason that they're so gentle with us. So going deeper into the angel messages for the week specifically, when I was feeling into that crown chakra block, this feeling of constriction, this feeling of sort of darkness in terms of like, I don't know what's happening, or a lot of question marks, they were showing me a rose starting to come into bloom. And the answer here was that you can't force the petals open. True blossoming of consciousness with aha moments, integration, the answers coming in, it requires faith and space and time. And so, similar to how you wouldn't force a rose to like peel it open because it just wouldn't work that way, that's how consciousness feels right now. Like everything might feel a little bit confused, but it will open in its own time and it will blossom and there will be clarity there. So, aha moments will come in time. You can't force them. It's coming back to that same spiritual principle of allow, don't force. Allow, don't force. It really applies to literally everything. And with this message, there's also a component of even if there's someone else that you want to see a truth, like this didn't just feel on the individual level. It felt like, my gosh, why can't they just see it? Why can't they understand? And it's like, their consciousness has to bloom open to understanding that or seeing in the same way in their own divine timing. And it's not our business. We can't control that. So, really, really tough lesson sometimes. And I have been there. I saw butterfly coming up as our animal guide this week. So much transformation, remembering your wings, bursting out of the chrysalis, all of those things, like just a very transformative moment. And then as I was tuning into the crown chakra block as well, I was getting this message of having faith in the rainbow, having faith that the rainbow is going to come out at the end of the storm. And rainbow is my sign for like beautiful new chapters, beautiful new beginnings, and especially after a time of like intensity. So faith in the rainbow, faith in the timing, faith in the evolution of consciousness. So I want to go into the mediumship now. I did have a woman coming through in the spirit world, and it was really interesting because even though she felt like she was in her 40s to me, there was something very childlike about her. Like, I feel like other people would have made decisions for her. She never really fully stepped into her power. There was something very much like that with her energy. I saw smoking and I saw like chest, lungs, coughing. I also felt like pain in my left arm, and I felt almost a neurological thing. Like it was really hard for me to control the left side of my face. And then I also saw that she had dark hair. I felt like she would have been from somewhere in Asia. And I kept seeing her on her knees praying. And I felt like this was the most important part about what she was showing me, was that she was very superstitious. And she would get into this spiritual place where she forgot that she was part of the divine. There was almost this victim consciousness with her where it felt like everything was happening to her and she had no power over it. And that really showed itself in a lot of areas in her life. And I keep seeing her just after every single thing going to pray over her worst fears, her worries. It wasn't really focused on the blessings or the miracles or what she was grateful for. It seemed always based in fear and protection, and low self-worth was like her connection with her spiritual practice. And it felt very religious to me. And she said, I forgot that I am also part of the divine. And so that's one of her big messages here, is that spirituality is never supposed to make you feel less than. There isn't supposed to be a hierarchy. There isn't supposed to be comparison to other people's practices. Spirituality is never supposed to push you into a place where you feel like an ant that's just going to get stepped on and that you have to pray and do everything right and see all the signs. Like, sometimes it can get into a sort of manic energy there where it's not serving anyone and it's actually just a mask for different mental health conditions or states of mind that need deeper observation but can get swept under the rug. So I feel like there's something here about all of these messages asking us to come back to our body, come back to reality, remember what we are in charge of, what we do have control over, contribute to the peace. And so that contribute to the peace message really applies to what this beautiful soul and spirit is also saying, which is I didn't contribute to the peace. I gave all my power away to every force outside of myself. And one, that's not how spirituality is meant to engage with us. Spirituality is what we're doing here. It's who we are. We don't have to seek it outside of ourselves. And I think that's where we can get mixed up, is spirituality from an outside in perspective instead of an inside out perspective, which everything is already within us. We don't have to go looking for it with any type of retreat or crystals or special clothes. Everything is already in us. And I think with her, she was always looking for her power everywhere outside. And I think that superstition kept her from her true divine power, because I do feel like she would have had her own spiritual intuitive gifts, but just never got the chance to fully sit with them or develop them or explore them because she was always looking outside. So the last message here that she gave to me is to think bigger, because when she was showing me her mindset and how she was always playing it very safe, there's something about her life that felt very small and contained, and like she wouldn't venture to even think of the possibility of something bigger. And that's her invitation for you here. It's like not only thinking bigger about the potential for your life, but thinking bigger about who you really are, who your soul, like higher self is, and remembering your power. Because in so many narratives, the humans are always the weak ones, and everything else always has more power over us, like in scary movies and things like that. It's like everything reinforces the narrative that humanity is weak. And that's not true. We are very strong. We are physical beings on a physical plane. We have more power than we could even recognize. And the spirit world is all love. So that's what I will leave you with this week. I hope that you have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.